Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. This is another in our series of Global War 1936 to 1945 expansion sets. This one is called Atlantis Rises Again. And I'm not going to lie to you, this one's kind of goofy. This is kind of like a zombies, okay? So if you're one of those people that, and there's nothing wrong with it, if you like games with wizards and orcs and things like that in it, then this would be right up your alley. But if you're a World War II purist, like where you're trying to get as close to the real thing as possible on a board game, I don't mean with the horrors of war, but like trying to recreate the war as close as possible, then this one is nothing like what you need. This is kind of like taking it into a different direction and moving it into the fantasy realm. So let's just take a look at what you get. Like this, I gotta admit, this is not up my alley. I'm more of the second type of person where I want to try to recreate the war as close as possible. More of a historian than somebody that's into fantasy, and there's room for fantasy in my life too. I like those kind of movies and some of the games and things like that. It's just I don't want to mix the two. But anyway, there's this. So let's get into it. So this is what you're gonna get. There's the island of Atlantis, and I don't know if you know what Atlantis was. You probably do. I mean, most of us are aware of the legends, but these are the things that you're gonna get in the set. So just markers, basically. Okay, so let's get into this. Let me just take a look here. So, page 2. So Atlantis has been a continent of myth since the time of Plato. During World War II, the Nazis searched for Atlantis, which they believed was the origin of the Aryan race. The Germans even believed that the descendants of Atlantis had fled to the high parts of the world, specifically Tibet, to never again be victims of the Angry Sea. Atlantis Rising is an alternative history expansion for this game. So that's okay. So they believe those things, and they were looking for Atlantis. I can get on board with all of that. So how do you do this? It costs 10 IPP and is effective immediately when you purchase. When the German player spends the 10 IPP and says I want to go Atlantis. Good luck. So first of all, you have to find Atlantis. Now, the Germans may attempt to search for Atlantis. To do so, a German naval unit must be in one of the possible Atlantis locations and make a successful search roll as their only action during non-combat movement. So, in other words, you need to roll a 12 on a d12 in order to find success. If the search roll fails, Atlantis is not in that zone, and a second attempt must be made in different locations. So let's take a look at the possible locations where Atlantis could be, and there's a number of them. So I've marked them with German roundels. So you see up at the top of the board, there's one there, and there's one over there, and there's a couple over here. You'll notice they're all on the Atlantic side of the board, because that's where it was rumored to have been, is either somewhere in the Atlantic or in the Mediterranean. So there's 3 locations there, and there's 4 locations in the Mediterranean. I think that if Atlantis really did exist, and there's a possibility that it could have, and just an earthquake or something sank it into the ocean, then it was probably in the Mediterranean, because the myths all come from back in the time where the Mediterranean was the place that was settled, or at least where that part of our history books and literature comes from, is from the Mediterranean, right? Like you've got Greece, and you've got Egypt, and you've got Rome. All the ancient civilizations in Western civilization come from the Mediterranean. So to me, that's where I would think Atlantis might have been. And there's one up in the Black Sea as well. So those are the possible locations. Here, let's just set this here. Okay, so bonus rolls. Germany is able to add +1 to that roll on their search attempt for each of the following zones Germany or another Axis power possesses. And there's reasons for that. So we have Athens, Greece. So the Greece, you can add +1. So in other words, you would have to roll an 11. And if you had more of these places, then you could add, like if you had that one, and then the next one here is Cairo, then you could add +2, right, to the roll. So then you would need a 10. But you would have to own these places. So the first one with Athens is because of classical lore. The second one in Cairo is because of Egyptian lore. And the third one is Tibet. Now, the Axis would have to own Tibet. Is it Germany or the Axis? Oh no, it's the Axis. So Tibet, because of ancient legends. The fourth one is London. So you know where London is there, and that's because of the London Naval Observatory. And the fifth one is Portugal, because they had cartography charts there in Portugal. So if you own any one of those 5, you can add +1 to your roll for each one that you own. So why would you do that? Well, it serves as a permanent underwater indestructible submarine base. German discovery of Atlantis grants them a roll of the following on each turn during their production phase. So each turn, like if you manage to get it, then what you do, okay, so on a D6, so a roll of 1, you get +3 IPP in sunken treasure and world prestige. So you get a bonus of 3. Let's just say, for example, that it was here, just because it's nice and central. We'll say that it was right here. There we go. So you would get +3 for that. Plus, Atlantis is worth 3 itself. The territory is worth 3. Technology, so you get a free technology roll. A roll of 3 would be Tibet, align Tibet, replace units there with German SS units. So if there was any units in Tibet here, you would take them off the board and you would replace them 1-to-1 with SS units. A 4, Aurichalcum. That's the legendary copper of Atlantis. High purity copper reduces the cost of all German units except infantry by 1, and that's on this turn only. And remember, you're doing this on the first part of your turn, the production phase. So you would want to make your roll before you did production. In other words, if you were to roll a 4, that just means that everything costs $1 cheaper, except for dudes. 5, secret route. For the rest of the game, a German submarine that begins its turn in Atlantis may move 6 in non-combat movement. So a German sub in Atlantis can move 6 spaces for the rest of the game if at some point you roll a 5. And 6, wonder weapons. Now this is where things get crazy. This is where you start to lose me. Like I could up to this point I could see this, okay? Sure, okay, and they find Atlantis and that's great. But then it's when they get into the wonder weapons, because that's where the fantasy comes in. So first one here is this tide generator. So you roll a 6 and then it rolls again because you roll a 6. And then, so if you roll a 1, then you get the tide generator, and it's placed in Atlantis immediately. Each turn, Germany may make an opposed roll against each naval unit that is moving within 2 zones of Atlantis. So like if you were here, then there's these units here, there's these units over here, there's the French units up here, like any naval units that is 2 zones away, right? And they're moving. So that ship must stop in the zone that it is in. Germany may not initiate the roll until the ship has moved at least 1 zone. So a ship would move 1 zone and then they would have to stop, I guess. Alternatively, Germany may use the tide generator to make a strategic attack against an enemy naval base, shipyard, or seaplane base, causing 1 to 3 strategic damages. So you roll a d12 and you divide it by 4. at any point in the tide generator rolls a 12, then any of it, while it's doing anything, then it's eliminated. So you roll a d12 with this. If you get a 12, then you lose the marker. If you get an 11, then you divide it by 4. Or you get anything, you divide it by 4. And that's how much damage you do to any naval base within 3 zones. Like you target one, you don't get them all, right? So like you could say this naval or this shipyard up here, and you roll and you would do that much damage to it. So that is the tide generator. The next one is the Leviathan. So you place that marker in the Leviathan if you roll a 2. So you place that in Atlantis. And it doesn't move. Each turn, Germany may make a single D12 attack roll versus any specific ship within 1 zone of Atlantis. This attack is at 6 or less. All other units in the sea zone may fire back. A defending hit destroys the Leviathan. Alternatively, the Leviathan may convoy raid as if it were a submarine with a +3 dice roll. So you could actually convoy this line here. If you were here, you could attack any one of these ships here. You could attack a British ship over here or the French ships. You would probably want to attack a ship where it's by itself though, because then the other ships aren't going to shoot back at you, right? Okay, then there's the weather control. So if you rolled a 3, then you place the weather control marker there. Let's do that in Atlantis. The weather control machine makes a single attack at 6 against any one aircraft moving or on combat air patrol within 1 zone of Atlantis. On a roll of 12, destroy the weather control machine. So, somebody's flying a plane through there. Any plane? Let's see, what do we got here? Okay, let's say the French player decides he wants to fly up to here. Whoa, I'm going to take a shot at you. So you'd roll the dice, and on a 6, you would kill that plane. On a 12, then you would kill yourself, like the weather control marker. So that is the weather control. Now then there's the death ray. Because what scheme wouldn't be complete without a Nazi death ray, right? So you place that at a factory in the German home country during the place units phase. Death ray may be placed beneath any unit in the supply path of that factory. That unit gains first strike. Anytime that unit rolls a 12 or is eliminated in combat, destroy the death ray. So any German unit, like you could be a tank, you could be whatever. Let's just grab this dude here, and we grab the marker, and we'll put him in here. So this guy gets first strike capability. Now obviously you wouldn't want to use a dude. You probably want to use a tank or something. You wouldn't use an artillery because he already gets first strike. So I would use a tank or perhaps a plane. That would work too. So that is the death ray. Okay, and 5 or 6. So if you were to roll a 5 or a 6, Atlantis rises out of the deep. The island of Atlantis is now a new land zone. It is worth 3 IPP to the owner. Place a German control marker and 6 SS infantry on the island. If the island is conquered by another alliance, they may gain the benefits of the rolling on table 1-1 each turn. Where's 1-1? Okay. Yeah, so then they can try to roll for all of these things. That kind of sucks. So you got to be careful about what you wish for, I guess. The Great Ship Canal on Atlantis acts as a naval base, so I guess the thing has its own inherent naval base. After Atlantis has been conquered, roll a d12 each turn. On a 12, it sinks back into the ocean, lost forever to the world. And that scheme ends. All wonder weapons currently on board are immediately removed. So I don't think that would include the death ray, because the death ray wouldn't be on board. That would be up in the German home country. So all of these things here, and then okay, That was those SS markers. So this is when this becomes worth 3 IPP. Let's just say you got all of these things, and then Atlantis rises from the deep. It is no longer an underground submarine base. Now it is an island. Now it's worth 3, so you would add 3 to the German income. You'd put 6 SS infantry on it, which would make it hard to take over. But of course, that would be something that I would want to do, is try to take that over if Atlantis rose from the deep. And that is Atlantis for all intents and purposes. Like I said, not my cup of tea, but you know, somebody invented it, and I guess it could make the game kind of interesting. You know, like if you were not a historian and you didn't give a shit about, you know, trying to make things right, you know, then yeah, that would make the game kind of interesting. And really, what you're trying to do is have fun anyway. And I bet you that would be some fun if you had 4 or 5 people playing this game, and you decide to play with Atlantis. Then yeah, I bet you it would make it a lot of fun. So that's Atlantis Rises Again. Take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.